Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're taking a look today at the Unihertz Titan Pocket. This phone fills a very narrow gap in the smartphone marketplace for people that want physical keyboards, but it's surprisingly well constructed given how small this company is compared to some of the other smartphone makers out there. And phone after phone, they pump out really quality stuff. So I've always enjoyed looking at their phones, and today we're going to take a deep dive into their latest one here that is essentially an Android phone that feels like a Blackberry. And before we get into this, I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, that I paid for this with my own funds. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own. No one is paying for this review, nor has anyone reviewed or approved what you're about to see before it was uploaded. So let's get into it now and see what this phone is all about. Now, the price point on this comes in at around $300 or so. This phone is a sequel, if you will, to one that they made a few years ago called the Titan, which was much larger. So this one is smaller and fits in the hand better, but it also has a smaller keyboard, which might impact your ability to type quickly on it. We'll take a look at how it types a little bit later in the review here. Like their other phones, it is very heavy duty and well constructed. It's designed to be rugged. It's got a nice metal casing here along with some heavy duty plastic. It feels super solid, and it's pretty heavy. It weighs 216 grams. That's over 7.5 ounces. But it really feels nice and sturdy as a result. So even though it's heavy, I like that rugged feel to it. And this is something they've done with some of their other phones too, just super strong devices that are designed to get knocked around a bit. It is not waterproof though, so you can't get it wet, but I do believe it will survive a number of falls without a case, and the phone kind of feels like its own case. Now, the phone is unlocked, and it will work with most of the major US carriers along with international carriers. And it supports 2 SIM cards, which is common overseas, but not always so common here in the United States. And what you have here on the SIM tray is a choice of 2 SIM cards or 1 SIM card and a micro SD card if you want to go beyond its internal storage. Now, inside, this has a MediaTek Helio P70 processor. It has 6 gigabytes of RAM and a generous 128 gigabytes of storage. So it's pretty well equipped. The processor, as you'll see in a little bit, is nothing crazy from a performance standpoint, but I think adequate for what people might typically do with a phone like this. And it has a pretty big battery inside, 4,000 milliamp hours, which is close to what you might get on a larger flagship phone. And because this phone doesn't have as much capabilities as a flagship phone, I think you'll have really good battery life on this, easily a full day of usage, if not well beyond that, especially if you've got the phone sitting in standby most of the time. Now, the display on this one is an IPS display, 3.1 inches, running at a resolution of 716 by 720. It looks nice and sharp. It's adequately bright. The colors look good on it. But because it is almost a perfect square, it gets a little weird when apps want to go full screen, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a few minutes. Now, you can, of course, interact with the touch display here, but you can also use the keyboard as a scrolling surface just by running your finger across there, although sometimes you accidentally hit a key and things go a bit sideways, but you can get a feel for how you can interact with the phone here. There aren't many ports on this one, but there are a good number of buttons. You've got your volume rocker here on the left-hand side. You have your SIM tray and SD card tray there that we looked at a few minutes ago. On the bottom, you have a USB Type-C port. This is for charging, but you can also use on-the-go data devices. It does not, though, do any display output. On the right-hand side, you have the power button, and then this button you can program to do whatever you want. So right now, I've got mine turning on the light here, but you can program it to do other things through an app that comes with the phone. So this is like a multi-purpose button that you can repurpose for your own needs. And then on the top here, you have a headphone jack, and when you have headphones plugged in, you can use the built-in FM radio to listen to over-the-air broadcasts. And then next to it is an IR blaster, because this can basically function like a universal remote control. There's an app here called Remote, and you can program this app to control all of your TVs and air conditioners and anything else that can work with an infrared remote control. Now, like most smartphones, you've got 2 cameras, one on the back and one on the front. The rear camera is 16 megapixels. It can shoot 1080p video at 30 frames per second. It's not very good at video, as you can see here, and it's also not very good at taking pictures, but it does the job. Here's what the front camera looks like. Again, nothing spectacular, but good enough to get your calls done, but don't expect flagship level photography out of this phone. So let's take a look at the keyboard now. I'm going to pull up their note-taking application. I have to say the keyboard reminds me a lot of the Blackberry keyboards we all remembered and many of us were fond of. It's got a nice firm feel to the keys. They click when you push them down, just like the Blackberry did. They are though small, and I think if you've been used to using a touchscreen phone, I think we've all gotten a little spoiled with some of that autocorrect. So I'm making a lot of mistakes as I'm typing, and I'm expecting the phone to fix it for me, and it isn't. So those are things to just keep in mind here, but it does feel very much like an authentic Blackberry, even though this is a reinterpretation of what a Blackberry is. In the center here is a home button that doubles as a fingerprint reader. So if I just turn the phone on and off here and put my thumb down on there, it will let me in. You also have some of the other Android functions as physical keys here. So this is my application switcher. And then this key here is the back button, which is really helpful. One thing you'll notice, though, is that when I pull up a text input field, it does take up a little bit of the screen for some additional items. One of them is the microphone button for dictation. I also have this button here if I want to pull up an easier to access number pad. The numbers here are kind of baked into the keys. I've got to hit the Alt key to tap on those keys. I can, of course, double tap Alt and make those keys lock in as numbers, but it might be easier sometimes just to go to the touch screen for the keys I'm not hitting frequently. So there is no number row on this, at least not a physical one. It does, though, have a great backlight, as you can see here. So it very much feels like what a modern Blackberry phone would feel like if they were still making them. Unfortunately, though, it's just hard to type for me just because I'm so conditioned now to these touch screens. And I do wish the spacebar was a little bit bigger. I'm finding myself having difficulties hitting that when I'm trying to type quickly. But if you're looking for a physical keyboard and you want the most up-to-date Android phone, this one is probably the one to get at this point because I don't think anyone's really making a phone as close to the original Blackberry feel as this one running modern Android. Speaking of modern Android, this is running Android 11. I've gotten a number of updates on this phone since I got it a couple of months ago, so it looks as though, like their other phones, Unihertz will support it for a while. The latest security update on this one was current to December of 2021, and I am recording this video in February of 2022. Now, with this being a modern Android phone, most of the Android apps out there will run on it. We'll take a look at Google Chrome here and see how the nasa.gov homepage springs to life. And you can see one of the constraints you run into when you've got this square display. Most mobile formatted sites are anticipating a longer display, and you really don't get a lot of room to read anything here, as you can see. So it's a little tough there. And I can, of course, rotate the display, but because it's square, no matter which orientation it's in, I've got the same problem here. So you will struggle a bit if you're used to a longer display. Now, you'll also encounter challenges when you're watching video on the phone due to that square display. Here's an example, my YouTube channel, and we'll pull up a video here from it. And this is a 1080p video, and 1080p video is running at a 16:9 aspect ratio, but we've got a square screen here, so it only takes up the top portion of the display in portrait mode. And then if I want to go full screen, you'll see that it doesn't do much better here either because it's got to fit that wide video into a square. So you're going to have big letter boxes there, top and bottom, and there's just no way to avoid this because the keyboard is in the way on this phone. But you do get all the features you get on other phones, including the ability to run video picture-in-picture like that, and it will perform just fine and play back the video just fine. It's just going to be a bit constrained on this square display. Now, games will suffer on this a bit because of the square display. Some games don't know what to make of it. So, for example, if I load up Pac-Man 256 here, you'll see it kind of goes bonkers trying to figure out which way to go to get to full screen. So I found with this one, if I go out and turn off the automatic screen rotation, it will orient itself properly. And there it goes. I was testing it out a little bit more. But it is able to get working, and it will work in this instance in portrait mode. Now, another game here is Jetpack Joyride. This one doesn't have the same problems as Pac-Man did, but this game always wants to run in landscape mode. And again, that's because these games really don't know how to orient themselves to this square display, because most displays are not square. But the games run okay, but just not an ideal gaming experience just because you never know which direction the screen's going to be pointed in. And on the 3D Mark Wildlife Benchmark test, I got a score of 731. That's at the bottom of the barrel compared to most of the other smartphones we've looked at here on the channel. So don't expect great gaming performance out of this, and certainly the screen orientation issues will limit some of the fun you'll have playing games on this phone. But this is really not a game-playing phone. It is a utilitarian device for communicating, and I think it does the communication tasks quite well if you are looking for a tactile keyboard. Phone calls work fine on it. It's got a nice clear handset speaker here, along with a nice and loud speakerphone speaker too. So I think it's really designed for people that miss that Blackberry feel and want some of the modern accoutrements that we get with modern smartphones. This is not trying to become a market-leading phone. They are looking for a specific buyer that wants a phone specifically like this. And if you are that buyer and you know who you are, I think you'll be quite pleased with this phone because it is a lot smaller than the last one they put together. It is incredibly well constructed. It lives up to what a Blackberry might look like if they were able to survive into the modern era here. So I think for people looking for a phone like this, you'll be very pleased with it, provided you understand that the Android operating system doesn't find itself on a lot of square displays. So it'll be fine for email and some basic web browsing or whatever, but some of the more advanced multimedia tasks will likely be something you'll want to have a more traditional smartphone for. That's going to do it for this look at the Unihertz Titan Pocket. And until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters, including gold-level supporters Jim Tanis and Tom Albrecht, Hot Sauce and Video Games and Eric's Variety Channel, Brian Parker and Frank Goldman, Amda Brown and Matt Zagaya, and Chris Allegretta. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to lon.tv/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit lon.tv/s.